What's up, friends? Working on some stuff. Figured I'd share. Is that probably not a bad idea? Not yelling at me.
Stop yelling at you.
All right. There we go. Cool. Well, this is about as good as it's going to get, given the fact that I only have a kitchen island to work on. But cleaning up my P-base here, installing a new neck shim to replace the business card. It's been in there for a couple years. Probably did that in 2011. So yeah, been in there for almost 10 years. Time to be a big boy and use big boy things. So I'm using one of these StewMac 1/4 degree shims. It's about the same pitch as this was given me, so I should be good to go there. I just cleaned up the frets with some fret erasers, so they're looking nice. And now I'm just gonna clean off the fingerboard while the neck's off, because that's the easy way to do it. And pop it back on, string it back up, check action, check intonation. It should be in pretty good shape. This one's actually pretty easy, so. Thankfully, this bass was already in decent shape, so it's not a big kerfuffle. Well, this fingerboard is kind of gross. For the record, I am using this stuff, this Dunlop product. This is a cleaner, and it's pretty remarkable what comes out of a fingerboard that hasn't been cleaned in a couple years. I don't think I've done this in maybe 2 years. Not 100% sure. I don't keep great track, but yeah, just all that dark brown stuff is what's coming out of it. And it's just kind of like, ew, okay, neat. What's that telling me? Try another way of going live during your broadcast. No, I'm good, thanks. So, at any rate, yeah, I'm gonna give that a couple of goes, because this thing was pretty nasty. Actually, come to think of it, I'm using a lot of Dunlop product right now. I'm leaving the strings on it because they're relatively new and in good shape, but they're Dunlop as well. Let's see. Ugh, man, the second round, tons of junk. So. I didn't need that knuckle. So, give that a second to dry. Man, it is pretty remarkable what kind of junk can build up on these things just by running your hands over them over a year or two. It's yucky. Who else is here? Oh, hi, Paul, Megan, hi, how's it going? Just cleaning up a guitar here. Figured I'd share the experience because it's so enthralling. It's good Lord, what is going on this fret? Hang on. run specifically, and let's see what gets cleaned out of that. Man, that is ridiculous and disgusting. Generally looking good. All right, so let's see what's next. Well, I should probably oil it because it has not been oiled in a while either. This stuff, it's a deep conditioner. I don't know how deep it is. It's deep. I feel like that's marketing, but whatever. It's still better than not doing anything.
Well, that way you don't get those flyaway frets.
That's true. Well, and it just, you don't get splits, you know. We live in Minnesota. We go through a lot of humidity changes and a lot of stuff like that, and you know, you can run into stuff. These things don't necessarily take care of themselves, so yeah, it's not a bad idea to oil them up every now and then. I know a lot of pro guys just use stuff like boiled linseed oil or something along those lines. Some guys like gun stock oils. Well, that's more for finishing. But rosewood's an oily wood, and it does like to occasionally see a little treatment with oil. Keep things, you know, looking nice and glossy, and you know, keeping the wood healthy. So hopefully it's you don't run into any weird issues. I don't think I've ever seen. Have you ever seen a fingerboard crack ever? You ever seen a rosewood board just split, like not from damage?
Only from damage.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen one split because of
Dryness.
a dryness thing. Yeah, and rosewood's a.
If it did, it was already flawed.
Yeah, rosewood's a pretty ridiculously oily and hard, dense wood. It's a really durable wood. So, you know, I don't think you have to be too precious with it. But you know, doing stuff like this, keeping it in nice shape, keeps it in nice shape. God forbid. This is just thrill-a-minute stuff, I know, which is why I decided to share my experience with everybody. Okay, what the hell are you watching for? You're right here. That's not...
I'm thrilled this minute.
Oh, fair enough. And there we
I
go.
wanted to see what the delay was.
Oh, it's significant.
Yeah, it is.
All right, there we go. Got her. These things look like they're dry. Oh, that one's kind of soaking it up. We'll give that one a little extra. Kind of just go over it one more time. And you can see she's nice and shiny and oily. Yeah, look at that. Look at that glint. So, give that a minute to soak in, and yeah, you would be thrilled. Nerd.
You said it was a thrill a minute.
It is a thrill a minute.
I'm thrilled.
And
Oh.
which is well, it's 100 centithrills a minute. Because you know, there's 100 centithrills in a full thrill.
Good Lord.
What? I'm allowed to make up units of measurement
I like that.
when it comes to thrill.
Well, now you can create proportions for thrills.
Well, like the centithrill.
Yes.
Huh. 55 centithrills. It wasn't as fun as it could have been. But that actually means 60 cent... No, 100 centithrills is a thrill a minute. Right?
No,
Yeah.
60 centithrills would be a thrill a minute.
No,
Wouldn't it?
because you need 100 centithrills to make a full thrill.
But 60 seconds makes a minute.
Right, so you need 100 centithrills in a 60-second time frame in order for it to be one thrill per minute. Learn how to do ratios, you troglodyte.
See, I didn't do math.
Clearly. Guess what? You still aren't.
Yeah, I left math in 8th grade.
You're still not doing math. All right.
I know that my foot and your butt are, well, that's not bad either.
Try me. So, give it a second to sit and soak in and wipe off some excess. Also kind of helps finish cleaning it off when I polish the frets. It also accumulates a bunch of junk because you're literally, taking a tiny bit of metal off to make them shiny again. And, with the open pores of the rosewood, it, collects some junk. And so you go in, you clean it out, you oil it up, and then it's nice. Like it came out of a factory somewhere. More recently, because it did come out of a factory. In this case, this one came out of Fender's Corona factory in 2003, as is evidenced by the 2003 stamps on the back of the neck. This actually started life as a Highway 1. This is a 03 Highway 1 P bass that I have. I believe the technical way to describe it is modified the poop out of. Because, when I got it, it was all right, but I didn't quite love it. And so, 3-4 years ago, I put a new pickup in it and liked the sound of that better. Actually, a little before that, I put this ugly gold pickguard on it, and I liked the look of it better. And then I relicked it a little bit, not too heavily. I'll show you when I've got it all put together here.
What are the units of measurement for poop mods?
Well, it's one poop.
Oh, okay.
One poop is the unit of measurement. So, but yeah, this thing's been, I've had this bass for a long time. I think I bought this in 2007, 2008. And done a lot with it. Recorded a bunch with it. Played a bunch of shows with it. It's a good bass. It's treated me well. Okay. Well, that's looking, now you can see it's still a little sheen, but not like the gloss lacquer vibe that was going on before, right? So now I've got this 1/4 degree shim in, which I'm looking at and realizing I think I have it in backwards because I'm a dummy. Let me check something here, make sure I measured this right.
Wow.
Oh, 325. Okay, cool. So the thickness of the shim I'm replacing, I measured this with a caliper. It was 0.0275 inches, and I don't mind a little more back angle. This just measured at 0335. Is that what I just said? I can't remember. Zero out my caliper. 315. 310. Somewhere in that ballpark. Not the most accurate caliper on God's green earth, but it does the job. This also means now that my screw holes are in the wrong place, because I'm a smart man. Immortal words of Forrest Gump. I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is. In this case, I know which end of the shim to put on the bottom of the neck pocket here. This is good though, because I get to actually show more what I'm doing. So, in this case, the shim is... Yeah, you get to see my face. Lucky you. Ugh. Yeah, I need an extra set of hand screws to plug it out. There we go.
I do.
So,
That's hilarious.
you can see the neck pocket here. Where am I? Where is that? Am I in the... Can't tell if I'm in the dang shot. Rotate your phone. Yeah. Oh, I can't. Okay, whatever. You can see that the neck pocket here is way big for the shim, so I don't even need to trim it like with some shims or smaller necks. Like if this were a guitar neck, you'd have to trim it. But anyway, so I had this inverted when I poked the holes in it, so now I'm gonna just relocate them real quick. There's one. There's two. Cool. And now, thanks to a very kind gentleman on Instagram, instead of drilling these, which was my MO for the first couple of these that I did with these StewMac shims, they're thin enough that it's kind of just like punching holes in sheets of paper. So you can just run a hole punch through them. Center that up there. And you get a nice clean hole. Kind of like cheating. And I'm okay with it. Let me see that one. All right, there we go. No. Like that center. And there we go. Oh, come on, get off of there, you thing. There we go. Cool. And now, fits over the screws in the neck pocket. And this base is shimmed. Sweet. So now, got the shim in. We get to reinstall the neck. Yay. And we get to throw stuff around here. Hang on a second. I should probably take 2 seconds and make sure I'm not causing a bigger problem. Oh, there it is. Where the hell did I put my bottle of spray stuff? Right, let's get in the movie here, eh? So, just gonna start by the neck screws are kind of poking out, which I don't need them to be at the moment. Come on, back out there, you pig. There we go. And let's see here. Turn this so you can see kind of what's going on. Of course, doing 2 things I shouldn't do at the same time, probably. But hey, here we are. So, now it's as simple as just screwing the neck back on. There is one little thing I'm going to do, though, once I get this bolted back on, which is going to seat the neck. I've seen this work a bunch of times, and it's kind of interesting. But I do like to kind of, as I'm not snugging any of these down yet, I do like to keep a little pressure down, pulling it into the neck pocket, so that it's seated as deep into that neck pocket as it possibly can be. I think that's just generally good practice and probably best for making it sound good. So I'm not gonna like give them a full-on torquing. I'm just gonna make it snug so that when I put strings on, it doesn't rip the neck off, because you know that'd probably be bad for business. Okay, move those out of the way. And like I said, these strings are retreads, but that's fine. They've only been on for a little while. Ooh. Would you look at this? There's still some oil kind of coming back out of the fingerboard, which is, you sometimes see that if you've ever oiled anything wood, furniture-wise or whatever. You'll see stuff like that. So, all right. There we go. Looking good, looking good. Where's the headstock? We are way up here. Cool. All right. Yeah, generally best practice might say to replace the strings, but the strings just ain't that old. I don't think I've done it. Well, I haven't done a ton on them since I did this thing to my finger, which be careful with your vegetable peelers, kids. That hurt quite a bit, and it's 2 weeks out, and it's still recovering, and still really can't use it for anything, which is a massive drag for a dude who plays instruments a lot. So, let's see here. I did. So did I bring a winder up here with me so I don't have to spend a week doing this? I sure did. Not smart enough to not clip off part of my fingertip, but I'm smart enough to bring a peg winder with me so I don't have to spend a week putting these strings back on. There we go. This isn't quite seated the way I want it to be. I feel like that can sit a little lower. There we go. Also, this raises a very, I think, important point for these instruments, which is especially on Fender basses, but on pretty much any Fender or Fender-style headstock. The lowest couple of strings, the break angle over the nut is determined almost entirely by how much string you put on the peg. And, oh, there we go, the bridge. I was like, why is that winding on that way? It seems like too much. It's not too much. So, I do try to get, I got 3 wraps on here, maybe 4, but that makes a big difference as far as how sharp that break is there, and if you get a good downward angle on that, it can prevent a lot of problems. I've had a bunch of friends, the A string especially on Fender basses is problematic, and you really got to make sure you got a little extra string on that tuner, or it will buzz. It will 100% buzz in the nut, and then you'll be going, oh, this Fender's a piece of crap, and it's not the bass's fault, it's your fault. So, there we go. Now I can take this off. Put this back here. Reinstalling strings is actually probably more difficult than actually just installing new ones. But I also am a bit fastidious about it because it does make a difference. Tuning stability is better if you get them on neatly. You know, your wraps are nice and tight and clean, and you know, again, with Fender stuff, if you're down the post far enough, that really does help hold the thing together and make it sound good. Yeah. Sweet. 2 for 2, and I'm getting a little extra break at the neck here, which is nice. Likewise for the, and why I put the shim in the first place, actually, is worth talking about. So, when I first got this bass, it was kind of spongy feeling, and even with the neck adjusted pretty straight, I could not get the action where I wanted it because the saddles were bottoming out on the bridge plate, which, if you meet those conditions, your neck's straight, your action's still high, and you can't adjust your bridge down any further. That means your neck angle is not what it needs to be. Now on a set neck guitar, that's a real problem because the neck is glued in, and changing the neck angle requires pretty major surgery. On a Fender or any other bolt-on guitar of similar construction, it just requires a shim. And I am a big fan, I've just started using them, of the StewMac maple shims because they come in a variety of angles, which is really nice. And they're a hardwood shim that basically fills up the whole neck pocket, so you don't run any risk of like warping the neck at the very bottom of it down, up here. You can kind of potentially put a little rise at the very end of it, which is not a good thing. So, at any rate, that was the inspiration for today's surgery. Was this neck needed a shim, and I had a minute, and figured I'd take care of this real quick. And, since I've been talking about doing this stuff, I figured I might as well just kind of show you what I do a little bit here. So, anyone even watching right now? I'm live and no one's watching, which is great, because now I'm just doing stuff and talking to myself. But hey, this is how we have fun on a Thursday night in the winter in Minnesota, right? Right, there we go. There we go. Strings. That's not a tuning anyone recognizes, but that's okay. I just need some tension because I want to see. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier. Get this back. Nah. What I'm going to do is loosen these neck bolts just a little. And what you might hear, there's just a little bit. Sometimes you hear a pretty dramatic crack when I do that. But what I'm using is the string tension to pull the neck down into into the pocket on the bass. And now I feel like, now that everything's under tension and where I want it to be, more or less, cinch these guys down. There we go. And that neck is probably about as stable as it's going to be. And now, yeah, that definitely changed the neck angle a little bit. So I added another, what is that, 275, 0275, I went to 0310. So, tens, hundreds, thousandths. I added maybe 30 thousandths. Thank you, Eric. So, Eric, okay, I'm going to confess to this right now, Eric. So, I helped Eric out with a guitar of his a couple weeks ago. And when I was restringing it, just because of the shape of the headstock and the kind of differential pressure on the nut, I put the low E string on first. And it pinched down on the nut and sent it shooting across the room and scared the crap out of me because it was a very nice, very expensive, and very, very lovely Elliott Royal Haven. It's absolutely gorgeous guitar. I'm jealous of it. It's one of the few guitars at that price point that actually, I think, warrants its price point. I think it's an amazing guitar. Seriously, one of the best I've played in a while. But don't think I didn't almost poop myself just a tiny little bit when I sent the nut flying across the room. Thank God it's an easy thing to fix, but man, the initial shock of that was just shocking. So, all right, where are we at? We got the neck attached. That's looking good. String action now is insanely low. So, let's see what we're at here. And I'm going to measure this down here. I got this little handy dandy gauge. And Fender specs are they measure all their stuff on the 17th fret. It's all arbitrary as long as you use the same fret if you're measuring stuff on your own. Just for consistency's sake, so you know what you're doing. Okay, so I know 4/64ths. Reduce your own fractions, please. It's a little low, I think, on this top string. I think that's going to get slappy and a little weird. And I also do know one of the things I recently invested a little dough in is this little guy. This little guy is called a fret rocker. These four sides, excuse me. That is a quadrilateral. Are made so that you can bridge any three frets and see if one of the frets is higher than the other. You shouldn't hear any tapping. Ooh. And you can hear, you might be able to hear a little rattle there. And that doesn't rattle so much. That does. So yeah, my 11th fret's a little high. It's not a lot high. This is like, if you run into buzzes or weird issues, this is the tool you use to find out where they are. And I noticed also that I had a high fret up here. Yep. Yep, so that fret's high. My 11th fret's a little high. If I really wanted to, I'd probably get it leveled. I'm not going to deal with the level just yet, because it really doesn't cause me any issues. So it's what we do, you know. We sometimes live with it, and in this case, it's a bass, and those are real close. And bass action tends to be a little higher. You gotta have things up a little bit to accommodate for the larger motion of the string. So I think I'm actually going to tune this guy up to pitch and kind of start the setup procedure proper. I did check some stuff before I started this earlier today, but so the first step in any setup is to check the neck relief, the neck straightness. This is going to take a couple of trips because I was tuned pretty low. There we go. And especially on a bass, the neck's like a hockey stick compared to a guitar. Although on a guitar, it's not uncommon to go up and down it a couple of times to get everything truly and righteously in tune. Okay, that's actually pretty good for not having adjusted the bridge at all. The action's pretty good, though I do know this G string's a little low, and that needs to get adjusted. I'm also just kind of eyeballing it down here, and I think my D string's a little high. But first things first, I'm going to look at the neck straightness here. Oh, and for the record, I'm using a Peterson strobe tuner. I like those quite a bit. That one's one of the better pedal tuners I've ever used. Maybe a little dark for me to see on a live stage, so I don't use it live, but for setups and stuff, it's pretty wonderful. And let's see. Neck relief is, it's actually maybe not quite as, I might be a little more than I even want. You can measure this with the string. I just got these new fancy straight edges, so I'm using them. And it looks like, I don't have a feeler gauge on me, but that actually looks like a, easy way to eyeball it. Hold the fret down at the bottom here. I use my elbow on this. Hold it down where it bolts on. Grab it at the top. Yeah, I could actually probably use a little relief. It's really straight. And that's going to affect the way it plays at the bottom end. So, first thing you do in any setup is adjust the neck relief, because that is the most fundamental parameter. Actually, the first thing you do, if it's not a guitar that's familiar to you, make sure the truss rod actually friggin' works. You'd be surprised how often these things are bound up. And make sure you use the right sized wrench. For the love of God, use the right sized wrench. This one is a 3/16. I'm going to take, ooh, yeah, you hear how tight that thing is. It's grabbing on pretty good there. There we go. Take a little less than a quarter turn off it. And when you check neck relief, I do like to check it in the playing position. And that might have been a little too much. So I'm going to go and put about it. I'm just going to put a little squeeze of truss rod back in her. Put about 1/8 of a turn back in it. I'm kind of doing this by feel. I really should have feeler gauges so I can be repeatable about it. But that's pretty good. So, advantages of having your neck adjusted properly, of course, are to play right, which is important. It'll intonate better because you're not pushing the strings down as far, and it'll sound better. I feel like the really good setup does maximize kind of what an instrument sounds like, because it does, it changes angles. It changes angles on the guitar, and it just kind of optimizes tension in places where it needs to be, you know, on the bridge. The break angle over the saddle, I feel like, determines quite a bit of how the instrument sounds. Oh, what's up, Matt? How you doing, bud? I'm just setting up a bass if you want to follow along at home. So at any rate, and that's really when it comes down to, and what I was kind of saying earlier, is when I bought this bass, whatever it was, 15 years ago. Good Lord, almost 15 years ago, yeah. 13 years ago at any rate. 12 years ago, I don't know. Sue me, I don't do math very well. The action, I couldn't get it low enough without having to change the neck angle. So that's where the Shim came into play. And the thing that surprised me was what happens down here. As you can kind of see, tilt that up a little bit. You can kind of see the angles we're looking at here, right? And this is a top-loading bridge, so it doesn't break quite as hard as some other bridges would. But, these saddles are all janked. I may need to detune this and fix that real quick. But at any rate, the steeper this angle is, the more kind of downward bearing there is on the saddle. And I think that just does a lot for tuning stability, of course. I think it changes the feel of the instrument, and I think it changes the sound. You know, that more downward bearing here just means that you've got less slop back here, more energy's going into the body of the instrument. So it's I think it's important, and I think that's why, you know, you take the time to put good shims in. What, you don't think this could be a very spicy setup, Matt? You don't know that this could be a spicy bass setup. There's no such thing. All right, so I just noticed my saddles are all out of whack, but I'm going to start working on this end of the bridge anyway, which requires detuning. So that's what we're going to do. Get the right hex key. And again, when you're doing stuff like this, for the love of friggin' God, get the right sized wrench. I've actually got this little kind of multi-tool screwdriver kit from StewMac, who's a guitar repair supply company. And it's got all the common sizes for, a lot of instrument screws. So that's what I'm using tonight. And it's incredibly helpful to have the right size screws, or the right size tool, the right size bit for the screws. So let me get these oriented the way I want them to. Oh, look at that. Look at that. That's way better. Cool. And just because we're going to start dealing in action, make sure I'm at least something approximating in tune. You hear how buzzy it is. That just goes to show you how flexible a bass neck is when it's detuned. Basses are tweaky. Come on, baby. Yeah, just by tuning up the other strings, the E string went flat by a whole half step. It was down to D sharp. So, now we're at the bridge end. Yay. All right, let's see here. So, action gauge, very important. Let's see where my action's at. The 17th, because that's where Fender measures everything. Holy crap, that's high. It's about 8/64, 7, 6, 5. Okay, so So I don't mind that my and I just kind of leveled out this G-string saddle, and that actually got it about where I wanted it, purely on accident. So I think I'm just gonna kind of make everything match. I think I'll probably leave myself a little extra room on the low E. But I think some stuff can come down. So 5/64s, 6/64s, which I know is 3/32. You can reduce your own friggin' fractions if you want. I'm not gonna bother. That's pretty much dead on 5. Let's see here. A string, just over 6. That one come down more than just a little bit. I'm gonna try to be kind of fancy about it and give the bridge a little radius so it looks nice, tidy. Could still come down just a little bit more. That's good. So yeah, when you lower the saddles, of course, the pitch of the string goes down too, because you're not pushing up on it as hard at the bridge. And the last little bit here. Good gravy. Almost 8/64. Ian, what are you doing with your life? 8/64. So yeah, on this, on a bass, I'm actually generally gonna kind of graduate the action up a little bit towards the low strings. It tends to make more sense. Depending on the guitar, I'll make it a little more even across the fingerboard. But the nice thing about measuring each string height is you also match the radius of the board. Some guys will do the top string, the bottom string, and use a radius gauge on the 2 middle strings, or however other many middle strings. I'm not opposed to that thought. Oh, hi, Brett. Oh, crap. Oh, and Dave, too. Oh, God, I'm going to get judged. Oh, boy. Play you Freebird. Get the fuck out of my chat. Brett, I don't know if it's on a bass. Who wants to hear a bass solo? I'm a bassist and I don't want to hear a bass solo. Go away. This is about setting it up. Yeah, no one plays up here on the E string anyway. It doesn't matter. But all those notes are ringing clean, and it's playing pretty even. I think the radius looks pretty good. You can kind of see a nice little radius job going on there. Looks nice and neat, tidy. So we're gonna move on because I like the string action, and I like where the neck's at, which means the last thing we gotta do is make her play in tune. So let's break out the strobe tuner and watch the most interesting / tedious part of this whole operation. Switch back to my Phillips. Brett, you missed all the excitement. It was so exciting and you missed it, and I feel bad for you. I'll still not play Freebird. Okay, so first things first, I like to intonate in the playing position. Gravity has an effect on the neck, especially on a bass, and I don't think you'll lose anything by checking it in the playing position. Oh, yeah, well, you can rewind it later and see the laugh-a-minute thrill ride that this has been. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Oh. Just a pinch flat. There we go. That's nice and stable. Cool. Also, I think it bears repeating, or it bears mentioning, that when you are checking your intonation, don't hammer on the string. Hit it kind of lightly. If you hit the string too friggin' hard, the string will kind of bow up in pitch under its own tension because it's moving so far it can actually pull itself sharp. So, in this case, pluck lightly. You don't need to beat on it. So, I've got the string sitting in tune very nicely on my strobe tuner, and now I'm just going to check at the 12th fret. And that is... So the string is actually reading a tiny bit flat, and the tuner is reading a tiny bit sharp when I press it down at the 12th fret, which means the saddle needs to go that way, which means I need to screw the adjustment screw in, or turn the screw right. In this case, I'm going to give it a whole turn, because these are pretty fine threads, and it just takes some screwing around. What's up, Mike? Just setting up a bass because, it's fun. I mean, it's fun for me. I know for a lot of people it's not fun, which is why I'm doing it. Ooh. Oh, that is dead on. I am very happy with that. That basically matches the motion of the strobe tuner exactly. Sweet. One down. Let's see what the A string's doing. A string's dead on. G's a little sharp. Alright. So again, detune, just because these are pretty fine screw threads. You don't want to strip anything, so I tune down a little bit and go give that a whole turn. Come on. And of course, this all changes. Like if you change gauges of strings, if you change action, intonation can change because the distance the string travels to the fingerboard's different, which means the kind of little stretch you put into the string, when you're pressing it down, you are technically deforming the string and changing the tension on it. So intonation isn't just necessarily accounting for the length of the string and the gauge of the string, but also how far it travels when you push it down. So that's why it's the last thing you do. You want everything else playing the way you want, then you do your intonation. Yeah, well, Brett, I don't need you judging me from over here. I wonder though, it is a fair point. I don't need no stinking other camera. I can prove it. Look at that. Look at that. No? Are you just the tiniest of bits sharp? No, I need to look. You are the tiniest of bits sharp. Okay.